Well, the Z06 finally has a replacement motor in it, a low mileage LS7 that's been completely gone through, refreshed. In the last video, we got it completely bolted into the car and in its hopefully final resting spot where it can bring this 2008 Z06 back to life. But we're not quite there yet. We're not quite ready to start it. There's still a lot of work to do. I've still got to button up the exhaust, get the accessories on, get the intake manifold on, get the dry sump back in, get fuel in it, get fluids in it. The list goes on, so let's not waste any time. Let's get right to work. I'm gonna start with one of my least favorite tasks on these cars, and that is this power steering bracket slash alternator assembly. Just super tight, you know, fiddly, very little access, difficult to get to. So I'm gonna start with the hard thing. Let's get the alternator bracket and power steering area situated over here, and then we can move to some of the easier stuff. Well, we're making some headway. Got my least favorite part out of the way. The entire accessory drive is on. Power steering bracket, alternator bracket, cleaned up the alternator, looks nice, got that on there. Water pump with brand new gaskets, got a new belt on there. Hooked up a lot of our cooling hoses, including the heater hoses and the lower rad hose. So basically our accessory drive is completely done, reservoirs mounted, looking good. Also over here in the passenger side fender, got our dry sump tank in. Our surgically clean dry sump tank, I guess I should say. Cleaned out lines, got those all in, torqued down into the dry sump LS7 oil pan. Got it all bolted in up here as well into this harness bracket there. So that's good to go. Dry sump is done. Over on the bench here, I got some new parts that I haven't shown you guys yet. I think I mentioned in the first, or maybe the teardown video, that we were gonna do something about this. So this is another area that lots of debris goes when you blow up an LS7 or probably any motor. Can kind of regurgitate back into the intake. And you could probably clean this out. You know, there's coolant and all sorts of stuff in there. You could probably clean it out, but for 50 bucks plus shipping, I was able to get this low mile takeoff LS7 intake, because these cars, guys, are constantly, you know, upgrading intakes to MSD or Holley high ram or mid ram or whatever have you. So these L7 intakes are, you know, not as common as a truck intake, but they are out there. So I was able to get this for basically $100 to my door. It's actually from a reputable LS shop, including bolts and basically everything we need. So A, why would you spend the time cleaning this out? And B, why would you risk it? You know, you could spend all that time cleaning it out, miss a piece of metal way back here in one of these runners, and then destroy your new $10,000 motor. So no brainer in my opinion. I don't know if I'm gonna throw this one in the trash or save it for my LS7 coffee table builds. We'll see if it looks better with or without an intake manifold, but this is never going on a car again, at least any car that I own. So got a good used LS7 intake here off a low mile car. We need to transfer the fuel rails and injectors over. Need to transfer our manifold absolute pressure sensor over, and we need to clean out this Elite Engineering catch can and then transfer that over. I think it washed off. I cleaned this thing up. It was a little dusty from sitting around. I think I accidentally power washed off the name here, but Sally built this motor that this LS7 intake came off of. I think I was going to put Sally on there, but we might as well keep Greg over here. You know, he did such a great job with the previous 36,000 mile motor, and you know, Sally's name is worn off now. So Greg is going back on the original car, so we'll transfer that over too. Why the hell not? Also got the air filter cleaned up. This thing was pretty dirty, so got this all degreased, power washed. It's drying out now. Then I can oil it right before it's ready to go back in the car. Same thing with the throttle body. Right at the edge there was more of that stuff. So blew this all out, cleaned it up with brake clean. Spick and span, nice and clean. Ready to get bolted up right there. So we got to transfer this stuff over to our new intake manifold. Got to get our X pipe on the car, you know, get this thing up in the air, get the X pipe connected to the headers and then connected to the back of the car. But you got to figure out which pipes are right, because as I mentioned in the last video, Speed Engineering gives you pipes for every C6, LS2, LS3, and LS7. So we got to figure out which ones we're going to use. But yeah, we're getting close. After that, you know, just fluids. I got some new spark plugs, new ignition coils, a couple other little things, but we're getting really close. So let's not lose steam here. Let's get right back into it. I'm gonna transfer everything over that intake manifold, maybe do some of the exhaust, and just keep getting this motor together. Well, that's done. And it wasn't all that fun. So probably a minute or two ago, as far as you guys are concerned, I said something along the lines of, oh, let's just toss the exhaust on. Nope. So the exhaust didn't fit as well as I had hoped. I bought Speed Engineering headers for that car, and they fit pretty good. I had to make one tiny little modification, but I wasn't, very upset about that because this car's 53 years old. Non-original bushings, the floor's been replaced. I'd used Holly mounts, and there was no one that said these will definitely fit. This car is a mass-produced Corvette, and this exhaust system should have been a bolt-on, no issues at all. I mean, everything is factory original. There shouldn't have been any problems. And what really kind of gets me is that every single review online said, yep, perfect fitment, no issues, love it. So I don't know what happened with this system. Maybe it was built on a Friday. Maybe the guy had a couple cold ones before he built it, or before it bent it up in the jig, but this section right here didn't fit at all. So you guys probably saw I had to modify this section right here. I basically just cut it and then cut it at an angle so I could kind of rotate the pipe to get it facing the right way. But the way it was before I did this part was basically angling right at the tunnel right here, which does absolutely no good. Like, it was really far off, not even like someone made a mistake. It just didn't even look right. Other than that, I guess it was okay. But, I figured out this whole debacle. You get back here, and because these are all slip joints, like how are you supposed to connect everything? If it's all slip joints, there's only so much movement here. I basically had to undo the exhaust at the hangers, push that all the way back. I even had to cut the X-pipe a little bit right here in order to slide this last intermediate piece in and get everything to fit. But we got it done. I was under the car last night starting this, just sat there pouting about how this was supposed to be a quick bolt on the exhaust and go. And, went to sleep, attacked it today with a fresh mindset, figured out a solution. And in the grand scheme of things, this exhaust system was under $600 shipped to my door. The headers fit perfect. It's all 304 stainless steel. The welds are nice. It's a decent exhaust system. I guess I was just kind of bummed that, every single review said perfect fitment, no problems at all. So when I get there and it kind of fits like crap, it just kind of threw me off. Obviously, I built the entire exhaust from the headers back on that car. I built the turbo kit on my Z06. I'm capable of fabricating exhaust. It's time, I just didn't want to spend the time to do it. So grand scheme of things, this wasn't that bad. I could have spent $2,000 or more on like ARH, American Racing Headers, or a Kooks or another name brand. But, for 1/4 the price, I guess I really can't complain that much. It's just, I guess I'm not understanding how everyone else online said that theirs fit perfect on their C6, because if I didn't have a saw and a welder and some fab skills, I don't know how you would have got this on your car. I don't think it would have worked. Again, I guess I can't complain too much. It didn't cost me anything to modify it other than my time and the fab work. Now we have a complete stainless 3-inch off-road X-pipe, long tube headers, 1 7/8 inch, all the way back to the stock mufflers for under $600. Just took a while to install it, but it's done. Also, I noticed while I was under here, the factory mufflers, you guys that don't know C6 Z06s, they have a butterfly valve in there that from the factory would open up like above 2,000 RPMs or something. Most guys do the mild to wild switch, which keeps it open all the time. Another popular mod is called the muffler mod. Basically, you cut a hole in the muffler on both sides and weld the pipe around the perforated pipe that's supposed to reduce the sound, and obviously that'll make it, doing the muffler mod will make it louder. And it appears that this has been done. You can see where they cut a hole in here, welded it back up, and then painted it. It's rusting a little bit. An LS7 with 3-inch straight pipe, basically back to modded factory mufflers with the valves open. Should sound really good. So enough of my complaining. The exhaust is done. All things considered, it does look pretty good now that I'm, spent 3 hours, 4 hours fitting it. It should sound good, and we can cross it off the list. I made a mess with all my fab tools, so I gotta clean all that up. We can get back on track, get the car down, get the intake manifold on, cooling fan in, button up all that other stuff, get ready to hear this thing, hopefully. Starting to look like an LS7. Got the intake manifold assembled and on the car, fuel rails, map sensor, throttle body, got all that assembled. Got the intake on the long block, torqued down, got the brake booster connection on the back, as well as the muffler flaps, vacuum hose on the back. Radiator hoses are in, fan is in, all our connections are made. I added some oil to the motor, so it's got some fluids now. We're getting really close. You guys might also notice that I'm just using Rotella synthetic, or I'm sorry, non-synthetic conventional oil. And the reason I'm doing that is because even though this is a used motor, technically, it does have new bearings. The cylinders have been honed. I think the cam and the lifters are new. For break-in, it's typically better to use a cheap conventional oil, or a break-in oil would be ideal, but cheap conventional oil works too. So I think we'll run this for a couple heat cycles, maybe 10, 15, 20 miles, whatever, until I'm comfortable that the motor is re-broken in basically. And then we'll switch over to a synthetic oil, do a filter change, and run synthetic for the rest of the engine's life. But for now, just running a cheap, I think these are $15 each at Walmart, and a new filter on there. So all our spark plugs are out. I disconnected our fuel pump relay right here. None of my connections are really made yet, but what I'd like to do is crank the car over, to make sure that everything sounds healthy and good, no piston sitting valves, no loud clacking, no bad noises, and B, I'll pull up horsepower tuners in the car. You can see my laptop's already in there, and see if we can build some oil pressure just by cranking this over, basically prime the motor. I did attempt to prime the oil pump while the motor was out of the car. I think I showed that in the last video, but now I'd like to turn it over with the starter, see if we can build some oil pressure. Forgot my 8mm socket here. So yeah, got the battery charger on the car just because it's been sitting for a while, so we're gonna get a fully charged battery, get in the car, pull up horsepower tuners, and see if we can't build some oil pressure. This is it. Crank over the new LS7. Let's see what happens. All right, we're in the car. Got horsepower tuners hooked up here. Got a log started. Let me get this one started actually. So we got a log going right now. What we're looking for here is oil pressure. So we're just gonna turn the car over, see what happens. First crank of our new LS7. All right, there's one crank down. No oil pressure yet. We'll do another one. There we go. Building oil pressure. All right, there was 30 PSI. Little blip on the graph right there. Let's do one more. There we go. 50 PSI oil pressure and cranking. I'll take that. Awesome. So we have oil pressure. Motor sounds really good. Just in cranking, good cranking speed. Looks like we were at about 150 RPM cranking. Everything sounded smooth. So let me get out of the car. We'll check for leaks. All right, well, that's a great first step. I don't see any leaks under the car. We got good oil pressure, no weird noises. So we're in the home stretch right here, boys. So I'd like to finish up these last few things and see if we can't hear this thing run. Got to get our ignition coils back on. I got brand new plugs, brand new wires. I got a water temp sensor I need to put in the head, passenger head, because I broke the other one off. Hook up all of our wiring, basically all the injectors, sensors, all that good stuff. Get some coolant in this thing, the air intake. And then we hit the key and see how this LS7 sounds, and I can't wait. So let's get to work. Let's get these last few things done. Fire this thing up. And just like that, our LS7 is complete. Minus those beautiful coil covers that say Corvette and LS7. We're going to leave those off for now. This thing is completely back together. New spark plugs, NGK TR6s, new spark plug wires, got the coils back on, got all our evap lines on, hooked up to the dry sump, fuel lines, got our clutch bled and all the fluid swapped out of there, which was disgusting and probably wouldn't have worked. This was some of the fluid that I pumped out. This is just brake fluid, which is what you put in that. You can see all the chunks in there. And in the reservoir, this has since kind of hardened, but basically the whole top half inch that was in the reservoir there was goo. It came out as a cylinder. So that definitely wouldn't have worked. Kept pumping it out. Eventually got it to look kind of like this. Still can see some clumps in there. But eventually got it all bled thanks to our handy dandy speed bleeder here. Got nice clean fluid in there now, and the clutch seems to feel really good. So good there. Also filled up the cooling system using my vacuum cooling system filler. Pulls a vacuum on the whole system. You could see this radiator hose completely collapsed. Gets all the air out. Filled that up. That's topped off now. So I think we're good. We primed the oil system yesterday. I think all I really need to do now is do a final check over, just double check everything, make sure everything looks right. I'm gonna put 4 or 5 gallons of fresh 93 octane in the tank, because if you remember a video or two ago, we pumped all of it out because it was over a year old. This car sat for over a year and it was kind of nasty, so I'm glad we did that. So I'm gonna put 4 or 5 gallons of fresh 93 in there along with some fuel system cleaner, and we'll hit the key, see how this thing sounds. So let me get some fuel in it. I'll meet you guys in the car. All right, guys, we're in the car. Let's get this OBD2 interface plugged in. The key. No fob. Oh yeah, you know what? These C6s really don't like this horsepower tuners interface. It never seems to recognize the key. Now that it's unplugged, watch this. First try. Hear the fuel pump prime. Let's get any air out of there. Now I can plug this thing in, connect to the car. First, let's just delete any codes we have, just because obviously when we cranked over the car, we didn't have anything hooked up, so there'll probably be something stored in there. God knows what's stored in there from when the engine exploded. So let's see what we got. No DTCs. Probably because I just had the battery unhooked, so it's good enough for me. All right, here we go. 36,828 miles on the first LS7. Let's see how many we get out of the second one. Obviously, things we're going to be watching for are oil pressure, which you can also see in horsepower tuners. We'll probably have a check engine light for the rear cats, which we've deleted, and the tune has probably not been adjusted for that. Obviously, it does have a big cam, but the car had a cam when we took it apart. Even though it's a different cam, the vehicle should run well enough. I guess we'll see. It is like 35 degrees out and super windy right now, so not very ideal for getting you guys outside for a camera view, but we'll make it work. If the car fires up and seems to run well, no noises, no major leaks, I'm going to be varying the RPMs a little bit. Even though, like I said, it's a used motor, there are some new bearings in there. Ideally you don't want to just have it hanging idle the whole time. You want to get a little RPM in it as it comes up to temperature, and make sure everything seats and wears together properly. So let me go open the garage door. We'll get back in here. We'll fire this thing up. All right, here goes nothing. Got oil pressure. All right, that's something. Sounded pretty good. Sounded like a heads cam intake LS7 with the muffler mod. Let me take a quick look at this log and we'll try it again. Seems much better. What we got? 64 PSI cold oil pressure. Battery's charging. Let's go take a look outside. She's alive! Woo! As usual, we're gonna get some smoke burning off the headers. No worries there. Top off the coolant. Sounds nice and smooth, no lifter noise. Absolutely zero leaks so far. Just give it a little RPM. Oil pressure goes right up with RPM. All right, I'm gonna run this for a little bit. I'll check back in with you guys in a second. Heat's blowing nice and hot. Got the coolant circulating, thermostat open. Still no check engine light. Man, I've missed a cammed LS7. It's got such a unique sound. This thing's doing great. Absolutely whisper quiet. Very, very healthy sounding LS7. From the front and the back. All right, well, this thing's up to temperature. I'm gonna shut it down, we'll let it cool down, and it's getting a little smoky in here, so I'm gonna let it air out a little bit, double check for leaks. We'll go from there, but woo-hoo! This thing sounds perfect. Woo! Our 2008 Z06 is back in action. The 2008 Z06 is alive for the first time in over a year, first time in my ownership, with a completely new to it motor, completely new to it cam, exhaust, everything. Just this thing is running perfect. The motor sounds absolutely silent, zero leaks anywhere that I can see. Other than some coolant that I spilt over there when I was topping off the reservoir. Bone dry, no leaks anywhere. Everything sounds perfect. Even very minimal smoke from the headers, which you can see are getting some nice coloring on them now that they got some heat in them. Heat works well inside, so we know we have good flow through the heater core. I've been topping off the radiator, or I'm sorry, the coolant reservoir here. Oil pressure was great. Quick note about the LS7 and the C6 Z06 with the dry sump. You cannot check the oil whenever you want. Car needs to be up to, certain oil temperature, and then you need to wait between 5 and 20 minutes before you pull that dipstick and check. The L7's a tricky motor to do an oil change on. There's always threads on, how their oil change place messed up the LS7, whatever. It's for two reasons. One, as I just mentioned, there's an oil change or an oil check procedure that's not as simple as just pulling the dipstick. And two, the more common one, the L7 has 2 drain plugs. And a lot of times, especially in the older days when these cars were new, guys would take these to Jiffy Lube or whatever, or a Chevy dealer that wasn't familiar with the motor. They'd only pull 1 drain plug, fill it back up with 8 quarts, and it would be like 4 or 5 quarts over full. So just be aware of that if you have one of these cars. So I'm gonna wait a few minutes, then I'll check the oil and make sure it's all topped off where it needs to be. But I couldn't be happier right now. There's no check engine lights. Like I said, this car had a cam before, so clearly it's running pretty good. It had that one little sputter on the first try there, but that was probably just, you know, fuel trims, relearning, throttle position, who knows. But ever since that second one, I haven't had to touch the throttle for it to just have that smooth, lopey, nice idle. Revs clean, comes back down to idle. Super, I mean, this thing is running great. I can't believe it. So yeah, that is an absolutely huge milestone for this car, and the reason we got it so cheap. Wasn't running, now it's running seemingly perfect. I did check the clutch real quick off camera. Seems to work perfectly, at least in the first, I checked first and second gear. But we'll be able to check more of that in the next video. I'm gonna end this one here. We now have a running, probably driving C6 Z06. Still got a lot of stuff to put back together. Obviously the whole front end is off the car. We got these wheels, which I think I mentioned in the first video, have some pitting and flaking. The tires are pretty much shot, so we got to do something about that. Got some minor body damage back here. Got some cosmetics I want to take care of. The whole car needs a pretty heavy paint correction. But don't you worry, I'm going to get to all that stuff. You guys will be right there with me. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a thumbs up. That not only lets me know that you liked it, but also lets other people on YouTube and the whole algorithm thing let you know that, hey, this guy Chris has got some pretty interesting stuff going on over there. Comment, subscribe. Love hearing from you guys. All that being said, I hope you guys have a very Merry Christmas. If I don't get another video out between now and then, I hope to see you in the next one.